Hallo zusammen, I'm your vlog Dave, and yes, I'm back, I'm finally back, because if you're watching this right after this came out, this was released on YouTube, you might know that I've been, working on some exams in school and stuff, so I couldn't really make new videos, I didn't really have enough time. Because of that, I didn't really have the time to listen to the new Lindemann album in total. Like, I only listened to Knebel and, Steh auf, and I thought, you know what, let's listen to the whole album and then make a video about that, like my German thoughts about the songs, because I don't know if it might be different from a foreigner's perspective on the album, because this time we have German lyrics. I guess I'm also going to translate the songs' titles and talk a bit about some details that came to mind and that really popped out. So let's do that, let's talk Lindemann's F und M. Alright, so I've listened to the album once now, so this is gonna be my first initial reaction, review, recap sort of opinion, I don't know. And I'm also gonna talk about the songs that weren't released beforehand, like mostly I think. And that's why I'm gonna start with Allesfresser. I think it's a really cool up-tempo kind of song. In German we would say something like Der Song hat ein schnelles Tempo, because we would also say tempo, or you could also say die Geschwindigkeit, the speed. And even though especially the drums sound really electronic this time, I think it could also very well be a Rammstein song of sorts. And because of those Rammstein similarities and still a rather, electronic approach here and there, it reminded me of a mixture of Rammstein meets Nine Inch Nails in a way, or Trent Reznor, which would really be a cool collaboration. Yeah, I'd be down for that, definitely. So, der Allesfresser, although it is a proper German term, isn't really a word that you'd hear in everyday German. You'd mostly hear about that one in a more animalistic context, if you're talking about certain animals that are omnivores, that eat everything. Allesfresser. It's a compound word that consists of alles, everything, and der Fresser, sort of colloquial term, the eater, in a way. And again, which is also typical for some Rammstein songs, not for all of them, you might have noticed that Till doesn't roll every single R in this one. For instance, in Gib mir mehr, at the end of mehr you have an R, so it would typically be mehr in Till's typical, phonetic verbalization. But here he doesn't do that. And that is more typical to the standard German way of pronouncing those things, verbalizing those endings of words. That's actually true for many terms that also end in ER in German. For instance, der Lehrer. Here you rather have an A sound at the end and not Lehrer. That would be way too artificial and not even like something that sounds really German in a modern way. Alright, so let's continue with Blut. Das Blut, singular. And there's no plural, because it's the blood. And I'm surprised there wasn't a Rammstein song with that title before, because it really fits into Till's lyrical scheme, if that makes sense, because like in terms of things he sings about and topics he deals with in lyrics. Pretty much typical metaphors and contexts which Till likes to use quite a lot. Violence in a way, also sexual violence, so sexual themes in general, and those kinds of things. Interesting stories revolving around violence and sexuality. For instance, Mein Teil, which is about this, sexual cannibalistic case. You might have heard of that, and I might eventually do a whole video just on that song in the future. I definitely will, and I'm also gonna explain what that song is about in that upcoming video. But back to Blut, it's a more laid-back song, which is also pretty cool. The chorus is sort of lyrically stripped down, and for whatever reason, it reminds me of Umf, the band Umf. You might have heard of them. I've also made a video about them and how they've been a huge influence on Rammstein's sound, and it really reminds me of that. I can't really make out why exactly, but I like it. And as a fan of symphonic metal like Nightwish, which I'm gonna see live next year, by the way, together with Get Germanized, my YouTube friend, I also dig the classical singing in the background. Alright, now to a new single that they've released a couple of days or weeks ago, I think, by now, Frau und Mann. And now you know what F and M stand for, like the album's title, because it's die Frau, singular, die Frauen, plural, the woman, and der Mann, singular, die Männer, plural, the man. So it's woman and man, both genders pretty much. That's the, well, one of the big themes on this album, I think. This song has a, well, sort of a Spanish quality to it, I think, because of the ay 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 and stuff, which is really unexpected. It's a duet, which I really like as well. Something different again. It's more straightforward mid-tempo rock rather than metal in this case, which isn't bad. Although I have to say, gotta be honest, it isn't one of my favorites on the album. It doesn't really stand out that much to me yet. Maybe with more listens. We'll see. Let's continue with Ach so gern, which basically means something like oh so pleasantly or oh so dearly. I do something also pleasantly, like I really like doing something. Ich tu das ach so gern. Although it's a more poetic phrasing, because in, well, standard High German you'd rather say something like ich tu das wirklich gerne. I really like doing that. Wirklich, really. And I really dig this tango-like song. It's Der Tango in German, by the way, so really similar. And it's something like a little experiment in a way. Something out of the ordinary in terms of, well, Till and maybe also his comfort zone. It's always an experiment that can go wrong, but this time I think, right here, I think it really works. Like that. The acoustic guitar setting that we have here, which is, by the way, die Akustikgitarre, the acoustic guitar, it really brings out the best in Till's dark tonal qualities in terms of his singing voice. Because the contrast is really cool. And it really stands out even more with this. Like, I'd really love listening to a Rammstein Unplugged album. Like MTV Unplugged Rammstein, for instance. That would be really cool in a way. The music is sort of like happy even at times, but the lyrics are really dark and deep. The lyrics are about longing in a way, like a semi-poetic type of expression most of the time. The song is getting more hectic. Well, hectic towards the end, bit more busy, which also is really cool as a climax. Pretty cool. Linguistically, the phrase Schlaf ein, well, is a demand of sorts, maybe a wish. You could also say it pretty much means fall asleep. Please fall asleep. You might say that to a child, for instance, which is not to be confused with Schlaf gut, sleep tight, sleep well. In this case, it's a ballad type of song and a really cinematic, cineastic song, a soundtrack-like song even, which I really dig because I love good soundtracks and scores to movies and, well, TV shows and stuff like that, even video games. And Hans Zimmer definitely is one of my favorite composers. A really cool German guy, by the way. Might eventually make a video about him as well. Would be interesting, I think. A really dreamy quality once again, which is a cool contrast to most other tracks on the album. There is a slight reverb type of effect on Till's voice, which really works well with the fairy tale-like lyrics and the way he interprets them. And those little decisions, like in terms of production, I really dig those, because it really shows that they really planned how they want their songs to sound like. Also in terms of like depth, musical depth and details and stuff. And you might also have noticed that Till uses another one of his signature terms. A term which you can find in many various Rammstein songs and also Lindemann songs now, which is Sonne. Die Sonne, singular, die Sonnen, plural. The sun, of course, as a metaphor most of the time. And, well, it also gets used here. Regarding the track listing of the album, like the order of the songs on the album itself, I think it's an interesting choice to put this one right after Ach so gern, which was also quite quiet in a way already. And this one is a continuation of that sort of approach. But this changes with Gummi, a really aggressive type of song, up-tempo once again, more industrial sounding, like industrial metal, with really cool synth lines, I think, and again, a more electronic approach. And I think, at the end of the day, the electronic edge that most songs have, whether they are calm ballads or more heavy rockers in a way, I think that is one of the biggest differences between Lindemann and Rammstein. I mean, of course, you can also find lots of electronic sounds in Rammstein. Flake, you know, the keyboarder, he also plays really cool stuff and also really atmospheric stuff most of the time, rather than like pretty synth melody lines. He rather serves as someone who gives the songs more atmosphere and atmospheric depth. Anyway, here I think that's still a difference. So in the German language, Gummi is a really interesting noun because it can carry different articles. So it can either be der Gummi or das Gummi, really changing depending on the context and what you want to express with this term, which also reveals that it's an ambiguous term. In a neutral sense, it means rubber, the rubber. However, in a more erotic or sexual context, it refers to a condom, das Kondom, singular, die Kondome, plural. It's pretty much a colloquial, a slang term for a condom, das Gummi. Which also tells us that this song is about, well, sex and also sort of die Selbstbefriedigung. And I never thought that I would actually teach this term, but it truly makes sense to teach this right now. And I think, if I'm not wrong, this track rather is written from the perspective of the penis. Welcome to Lindemann's lyrical work, ladies and gentlemen. Surprises everywhere. And because Till really knows how to play with words and expectations and meanings, ambiguity here and there, which I've also made a whole video about. If you want to check that out, you can click it in the end card of this video. He also mentions other terms that are related to the term Gummi. For instance, der Gummischlauch, the rubber hose. Which then again, in a different context, also could be interpreted as a, well, more sexual term, once again referring to the penis. Der Gummischlauch. I mean, it's a Schlauch, you know, for the Gummi, for the condom. Yeah. Let's continue with Platz 1, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the most electronic sounding song on the album. Although it doesn't really have too many similarities in terms of the sound with Rush's Limelight, which is a really cool song, by the way, it sort of deals with the same lyrical topic, I think, which is about being in the limelight, in the spotlight, so to speak, how you deal with the attention. And in this case, it seems to be about someone who really is in dire need of being in the spotlight and getting the attention. Pretty much an attention whore. The attention is die Aufmerksamkeit, and the spotlight really refers to being in the public, in der Öffentlichkeit, die Öffentlichkeit, that is. Platz 1, ich im Rampenlicht, which translates to place 1, taken literally, but it actually means number 1, me in the spotlight. That's me in the spotlight. Certain synth lines in this one remind me of Radio by Rammstein, the new track, which is one of my favorites on the new album. And moreover, it also reminds me of Kraftwerk. It pretty much, I think, sounds like another little homage, a tribute to Kraftwerk. Next one, Wer weiß das schon? Who knows it anyway? Or who knows it in the first place? Another ballady type of song, which by the way, it's Die Ballade, the ballad. Really another soundtrack type of song as well. It really features a pretty cool arrangement once again, I think, and lyrically it seems to be about a non-returned love or a one-sided love or affection towards someone else, and that person doesn't feel the same way. Yeah, I think from the overall quality and the atmosphere of this one, it could be my favorite ballad on the album so far. And now let's make an exception to my own rule, because I'm also going to talk about Mathematik, which was released beforehand but in a completely different version. Because this time it's not, well, it doesn't feature the German rapper Haftbefehl, it's just Till. And it's a different arrangement this time. It still remains a hip-hop type of song, but it sounds way more Lindemann this time, because the Mathematik single version really sounds like a solo song. I think I prefer this version. However, I have to say the single version sounds way more experimental. In a good way. It really tried to be something else and something new, which I appreciate. You might have guessed it already, Mathematik, die Mathematik, equals the mathematics in English. Compared to the rest of the album and, well, most Rammstein songs I can think of, with a few exceptions, this track really is one of the most upfront in terms of lyrics, and also really expressive and vulgar lyrics. For instance, Fick, 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 Mathematik equals or translates to fuck, 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 mathematics. It pretty much is a personification of mathematics and, well, or algebra in this case, which is also mentioned in the lyrics, and you can even see that in the music video to the song, which is once again pretty hilarious. So once again, typical Till Lindemann move here of sorts. It's mostly ambiguous lyrics. It really is a song that has more to it than meets the ears in a way. Alright, so my thoughts on the album as a whole after one listen. The differences between like Rammstein on the one hand and Lindemann on the other hand are getting smaller with this album. I think on the first album, especially because of the English lyrics and, well, Till's Germanized sounding, well, English words and stuff like that, his phrasing pretty much, it really had a distinct tone to it. Still reminded of Rammstein, of course, because it always will remind of Rammstein in a way, because there are sort of obvious similarities in the style. But this time, I think it sounds even closer to what people might associate with Rammstein, or the typical Rammstein sound, if that even exists, because when you think about them, they've also changed quite a lot. Like when you think about the first 3 albums up to Mutter, Mother, their sound was a bit different to their later sound from Reise Reise onwards, I think, because then it became more, well, open and sort of more symphonic in a way, and also more refined, if that makes sense. I definitely prefer it to the first album by Lindemann, and I'd even go so far, and this might get criticized in the comments, I don't know. I think in a way, and I can't really pinpoint that 100%, but my initial impression is that this album, F&M by Lindemann, sounds a bit fresher than some parts on Rammstein's new album, which I also really like a lot. Which goes not to say that I prefer this one over the Rammstein album. It's 2 distinct pieces of work and pieces of art. At the end of the day, I think we all can be very glad and happy that we get to hear, to listen, to experience 2 new albums featuring Till Lindemann in 1 year. Rammstein and their self-titled 7th studio album, which I've also made lots of videos about, and this album. Like, I think that's cool. In general, I have to say it's a good album. It's not a perfect album or like a super good album, I don't think. It doesn't really impress me that much yet, or it hasn't really impressed me that much or touched me emotionally that deeply yet. But it's a good album, definitely. It's not a bad one. But I think it will become more difficult to have their distinct sound that is still, well, distinguishable to Rammstein's sound. So, thank you all so very much. Of course, I want to know, what do you think about the song? Tell me in the comments down below. and make sure to subscribe to my channel if you want to watch more videos regarding Rammstein and Lindemann and also other German artists coming up next, coming up in new videos that I'm going to talk about. I really love teaching and talking about both music and the German language. This is a really cool opportunity to combine both things. Thanks for watching everyone, see you next time, I'm your Vlog Dave, tschüss und bis zum nächsten Mal.